I'm joined today by a special guest. He's from Europe, so he'll bring a different aspect to the table today. His name is Nico Pantelis. He's the founder and head of strategy of Secular Investor. The website is secularinvestor.com. He has 2 decades of experience in the stock markets, and before founding Secular Investor, he was an equity analyst at KBC Securities, the biggest equity trading desk in Belgium, specializing in commodities, technology, small caps, and nowadays he's focusing on the global investment themes at Secular Investor, giving guidance to the analyst team. So Nico, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today.
Thank you for having me, Kenneth.
Nico, you're in Europe, and the situation in Europe doesn't look good at the moment. It doesn't look good, in a lot of places, here included in the U.S. We got helicopter money raining from the ECB. We had another terrorist attack in Brussels, and following the most recent attack in Paris. So just by way of getting to know you, kind of let us know your overall thoughts of the economy, the global economy, from your perspective in Europe.
Yes, the things you summed up, Kenneth, fit in the global picture. We have been researching for a while now with Secular Investor, and that is that there are some big wave evolutions going on around the world. And that is part of the secular trend that has been going on since the turn of the century. I started investing in the late 90s, enjoying the tech boom, and was blind for everything in it. So I also enjoyed the bust afterwards, and that kind of opened my eye, because I was a young fellow back then, and I thought, this is something strange. We have to research this stuff more, and then I started to figure out that things started to turn, I should have said that before, the alternative investment and against traditional investments. So alternatives like gold, silver, commodities, and other areas were in a big uptrend, and traditional investments were in a down move, especially the stock market. And what we have seen since then, and my generation, is that we have been evolving from crisis to crisis in traditional investments, and alternative investments are in a big secular uptrend. That's what we've seen. And the things you summed up are fitting in this picture.
Nico, now gold has been in a bull market, or started its reversal in Europe quicker than we've seen here in the United States. The dollar has seen some strength, and gold, was hitting lows as recent as the middle of January. But Europe has seen, and the rest of the world has seen, gold hit and be at pretty decent highs, in some places near all-time highs. So I got to ask you, is the perception of precious metals different in Europe than, let's say America, from your perspective?
Oh, I don't think it's a different perspective in the U.S. other than in Europe. I think the central bank in Europe is printing more euros than the Central Bank of America is printing more dollars at the moment. So that's the difference. The euro has been depreciating against the dollar, and that's the thing you saw in the last year. And what we see since this year is that investment demand is picking up again.
So what about people, though? Not so much central banks, but are people turning to precious metals as a safe haven in larger degrees?
I think slowly but surely. It's a long process we're in. That's that secular trend I talked about. It doesn't happen overnight that you enjoy something. It has to be a process where they get used to investment team in their mindset. So it's a process that takes years for someone to get used to a new fact and get rid of the old.
Right.
So
would you say that Europeans see the United States and U.S. Treasuries as a safe haven still to a large degree?
I think the mass investors are in the same mindset as the bigger mass investors in the U.S. is that they still think that stocks are the place to be, and safe havens are in treasuries or in European government bonds, but we don't think that's the case anymore. I think slowly but surely these traditional investments are losing faith among the big masses. And I think Europe, with these crises following up each other more fastly, are considering more and more precious metals or other alternative investments like commodities and things like that. So I think the more crises will follow up on each other, the more the mindset turns.
Nico, for our generation, the younger generation, when it comes to investing, how should our investment strategies evolve from crisis to crisis in this new economy, essentially, that we're entering into, where the old economy is not, there's no precedence for where we're entering into this new economy?
Correct. That's why we always that people should focus on the big picture and not get interrupted by short-term turbulence in the markets. And the bigger picture is that you should focus on alternatives and not ignore the traditional investment, but not focus that much on them like you used to. Get more clear on what is going on in other segments of the markets. And like I said, alternatives could be precious metals like gold and silver, but also commodities like we, for instance, at Secular Investor, agricultural commodities, but also base metals because of the supply destruction which happened with the price crush recently, or energy, which is also a favorite for us, especially oil and uranium are a few of these niche segments. But you can have other alternatives like or collectibles, and maybe even some digital code like the new Bitcoin which is coming up, which are all niches in an alternative investment segment. So that's what we try to focus on.
Right. All good stuff. Nico, when it comes to where we are going, deflation versus inflation, there's a lot of speculation out there as to where we will go one way or another. So I'll let you take this question and go with it where you wish. Obviously, you're in Europe. There could be a difference with what goes on with the euro versus what goes on with the U.S. dollar. So deflation versus inflation. Well, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's clear that we are now wrestling with some deflationary forces in the system worldwide, especially in Europe. Inflation is nowhere to be seen, but we see little pockets of inflation turning up here and there. For instance, a recently CPI number of almost 3. So things are purging up over there, and I think with the big wave that is going on with more and more rates turning negative worldwide, there has to be an eruption of a bigger scale inflation coming to us in the next years. That's my opinion. Yeah,
we've seen since the 2008 crisis, the response from central banks was to flood the markets with, tons and tons of money. And the money is sitting on banks' balance sheets, and it's not circulating. So
no, that's the problem. So we have been seeing for a whole cycle, 7-8 years, pumping money from central bank into the system, but staying on the same balance sheet of the central bank in the end. That's not going to give inflation to the system in any way. It has to be let go into the economy. And I think that's what's going to happen now at this moment. Central bank and governments are going to give incentives to banks and other companies to start pushing this money into the system. And that's what I think the gold market is signaling at this moment.
Do you think they're going to do it in such a controlled way where they will attempt to contain the velocity of money and not allow it to circulate out of control, where we do see that hyperinflation problem? I guess eventually they'll get to a point where to have any economic movement, they'll need to flood the markets. But to do that, they're going to have to hyperinflate their way out of their problem. So, your thoughts on that?
You know, Kenneth, that's the dream of every central banker, huh? Keep the system under their control. I don't think at one point or another that they have full everything they are doing at this moment. So I think this global massive injection will be an eruption of inflation, and I think if the inflation genie pops out of the bottle, it's gone. And how to get it back in there is an whole other story. I think things could get messy, and this should work out again against the traditional segments like stocks. For instance, stocks act great in an environment where you have inflation yearly, but start in traditional or the normal pace when inflation gets out of hand. I think that's where we're going. We're going to a stagflationary environment in the coming years. So below average economical growth combined with higher than normal inflationary pressures. That's my scenario for the coming years.
Nico, you've done some research on gold and the market, so I want to get your thoughts on the role of gold and how it's been trading versus the stock markets.
Yes, that's the thing where I started our company back in 2009. There was one ratio I was fascinated about, and that was the Dow gold ratio. So the Dow stock market against the price of gold. And back in the days, back in 2000, at the top, it bought almost, you could buy the Dow 40 with 40 ounces, and now we're almost at 50. How do you say that? The purchasing power of gold has been going up significantly against stocks. And all the while at the same level as in 2000 almost. Wow. It's going up significantly since then. And again, you saw, if you go a few years back, you saw cyclical bottom in the gold ratio around 2011 when gold topped out. And now you see that cyclical topping ratio, and this ratio that things are turning, so that there's an end coming to the stock market rise, and there's a new leg up for the gold market is coming. And in the short term, and we look at chart indicators in the stock market, which are telling us the same thing. Like for instance, financial sector very weak against the broad market, which is vetting. The transports are weaker. These are all parts of the market which are warning investors to not go full force ahead in traditional markets and look at alternatives in the market. And that's mostly our message to investors.
Yeah. Well, it's a powerful message, and I know you went through a learning experience during that tech bubble, and I spoke to one of our subscribers about a month ago, and he was just telling me his sob story about how he went through the real estate crisis of '08. He lost his job, lost his family, and it was at that moment where he too started to look into the functions of the economy, how things, inflate, deflate, and really started to understand why we do see these massive booms and busts. So, Nico, go ahead.
I think, and it's important for our generation, but also other generations, to look at financial markets in a different way. I think that's the bigger story we like to tell to investors. This is not a one-way street. It was pre-2000. This is a different road we're on now. We want to communicate.
So, Nico, your closing thoughts here. How do we invest in these unprecedented markets, picking stocks or purchasing metals? I mean, what are your thoughts on how to approach this here in the 21st century?
Yeah, first of all, Kenneth, these are normal markets. So investors should stomach. That's the first thing. And if you have a clear head and you're focusing on the right things in the market, then you can start to look at good pockets of strength in that market. We list of these markets, for instance, as we focus on gold and silver, and this is gold specifically because I have this equity analyst background, so I have a team of 10 guys supporting me in this equity analysis, and we look for the best of breed companies. Also for energy, we look at agriculture or base metals. We do more than just research the balance sheets or results. We management. We visit companies. We fly around the world to conferences. Like recently, we were on the PDAG and stuff like that, just to get face to face with these guys. Because the problem with these is that there's a major lack of good information and research about these companies. And that's where we try to fit in and give investors a good view and a clear view and an independent view on what we like in the market from top to bottom.
Nico Pantelis, founder of SecularInvestor.com. Visit his website there. Nico, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. If there's any latest news or events that you'd like to announce regarding Secular Investor, please do so.
We just renewed our website, so that's a new thing. We are always expanding our team internationally, so if anybody likes the message we are wanting to spread out to investors, please contact us via our website. And otherwise, we're always expanding our business internationally, so we're looking for to jump in and tell the different story in the market.
Thank you so much, Nico, for coming on the show with me today. We really do appreciate your insight and the research that you were able to share with us today. So thank you so much, and we'll definitely be able to talk soon.
Thanks, Kenneth.